Welcome to the Tesla Economist. Please hit the thumbs up and remember to subscribe. You can follow me on Twitter and talk to me on Patreon. I think EV prices will continue to rise, and leaving out commodity prices or inflation, I've said in the past this was going to happen anyway. Why? Because almost all EV manufacturers can't make a profit otherwise. However, Tesla has led the way, luckily for them, and started raising prices already. Tesla is no longer the disruptor, they are now the establishment. They don't need to try and compete with prices of ICE vehicles. Tesla has so much demand, they could set prices even higher if they so chose. In fact, it could be argued that Tesla is maintaining ethically low prices rather than trying to profit further from such a massive amount of demand. But Tesla's prices have certainly risen, and yes, for those of you who understand, Teslas are still exceptional value vehicles either way. But these price rises mean that the competition can also raise their prices, and they're still able to undercut Tesla on price. Well, at least some of the competition. However, some EV companies have to keep their prices below Tesla's, particularly Chinese EVs, as they're simply not going to carry the same prestige or value that give consumers a reason to pay more for them over a Tesla. There is no history of these brands, unlike something like Porsche. They have to make it on specifications alone, and therefore can never justify a price as high as Tesla, whilst also compromising on quality to reduce costs. I say the Chinese vehicles can't justify a price as high as Tesla, but perhaps that's not entirely true, as they may be able to offer something to customers that a Tesla cannot, a new EV delivered within a few months. This may be the biggest competitive advantage all other EV companies have. The fact that not enough people want to buy their inferior EVs means that you don't have to wait as long to buy one. Who knows how much value this may carry? It might even mean that they could even raise their prices higher than Tesla. I don't know, that will be for the market to decide. Tesla's demand could be as much a problem as it is a benefit, except the EV economy, well, it's not a traditional economy. It doesn't work like normal industries. The supply and demand curves are broken. There is such limited supply due to battery constraints, consumers are somewhat at the mercy as to whatever the EV companies want to sell them for, knowing that supply is so limited that they can charge ruthless amounts. When we see free market pricing out of control at the car dealerships, and they literally add on tens of thousands of dollars extra onto the price of these cars, or a lot more in some cases, then it's clear the market will pay what it has to, again, because there isn't enough supply. This makes it tricky for the competition too. There is a superior EV and it is priced at a reasonable level. EVs are so much better than ICE that they warrant a higher price tag anyway. They drive that much better, along with all the other benefits associated with them. And I'm just referring to general EVs, not even a Tesla. Then in addition to that, you have all the cost savings, no fuel, servicing, engine repair, or even brakes. This means that you could justify perhaps spending twice as much on an EV over an ICE car. And even though the initial price tag might be twice as high, the value is on par. For example, a $50,000 BMW is about as good a value as a Model 3 Performance if it was $100,000. Maybe even more, especially when these EVs have such a long life. I mean, if we're getting 1 million miles from the battery compared to perhaps 200,000 miles from an ICE car, that is a major discrepancy. 5 times longer life. You could possibly even justify 5 times 50,000 over a BMW. Say a Model 3 Performance is worth 250,000. I think consumers may start soon waking up and realizing that an EV is not to be valued like an ICE car. They are superior. I think we should also start calling a spade and just say that Tesla is far more than an EV or even a car, and certainly shouldn't be valued like one. I spend countless hours trying to value Tesla as a company from every single angle I can think of, but I think we should start trying to also establish the value of what a Tesla car really is too. I ran an economics model comparing a Model 3 standard range cost of ownership over buying a used $10,000 vehicle. The results were after 6 years, the average cost of ownership was $15,000 more for the ICE car, and I had Tesla depreciating nearly $20,000 in that scenario, which probably wouldn't happen. It might have even appreciated. In fact, it might even end up being more like $50,000 more expensive to buy a used $10,000 car over a brand new Tesla, based on average MPG and driving in the US. Teslas are a very low cost vehicle, and EVs in general are better value than ICE. Tesla is better value than all other EVs though, as they cost less to run. They use a smaller battery, like for like, the cars weigh less, are more aerodynamic, there is less energy wasted when charging. Yeah, did you know that? A Ford Mustang has 97 mpge compared to a Model Y at 122 mpge. and that's before any of this battery day stuff. But we don't know how long these Ford batteries will last either. When a car has 5 times the life, then that is some serious value. Of course, there is always the intrinsic value of a battery when the car is no longer feasible to drive and it can be recycled. Tesla is better in every single metric when it comes to efficiency and cost in EVs, or any cars in general. Tesla have created a brand new product, not just the EV, but I guess we can call it a Tesla. It is amazing, and we haven't even got into the fact it's a smart car, computer on wheels or robot, including all the associated features and entertainment, along with being the safest car in the world. No, this car is seriously good value. They are also the most fun cars to drive ever. But consumers are realizing fast. Remember, Tesla are still only at a run rate of around 1.2 million cars a year. That's not even 2% of all vehicles sold. More and more people will work out just what a Tesla is. It may take years, but I think the demand might not be able to keep up with the supply for some time. And this is on top of Tesla's production, which is about to go into plaid mode. But to begin with, Tesla had to win the consumer over, offering these exceptional value vehicles. Of course, there wasn't any competition back then either, but still, Tesla's demand wasn't like it was now, back in around 2017. When the Model 3 was launched, we were always told by the media that Tesla's demand is going to phase out as soon as all these initial depositors who put down $1,000 received their cars. Then the orders will dry up. Yet they kept coming. Just a side note, what if the same is true for the Cybertruck? But Tesla is a grown company now. People know the brand. More are starting to experience it, and more people are starting to order it. Tesla could easily keep raising their prices closer to the true value of this car, but they aren't. One of the reasons might possibly be because they are soon going to be able to flood the world with new Teslas when we see their new battery factories running and these massive new auto factories, giving Tesla a chance to try and meet some of the supply for these vehicles the market is asking. This does give an opportunity to any competition. They have the advantage of offering an EV in just months. And they can probably also do it raising their prices too. People need to think of EVs as a vehicle with prepaid running costs. Okay, sure, electricity isn't free, but it's nothing close to fuel. Once the market is more understanding of what an EV really is, then consumers should be able to justify spending that much more on an EV. I mean, if it was just $10,000 more than the equivalent ICE car, and it saves you $3,000 a year on running costs, then that's a 30% return on investment. Consumers just need to find $10,000 from somewhere, and that's an exceptional return. But it doesn't end there either, as at the end of ownership, the EV has likely depreciated a lot less than the equivalent ICE, and I would say that the initial $10,000 extra you may have had to pay for an EV over ICE, well, it's likely still worth at least that much more than the ICE. I mean, I'm just talking about in normal circumstances. If we factor in the movement away from ICE and to EVs on top of that, then it's likely a lot higher. And again, even at this stage, there still aren't enough EVs to go around. It's almost like musical chairs. Imagine watching ICE cars depreciate at high levels whilst gas prices are rising and people are trying to scramble to buy an EV. Yes, all BEV companies lose money on their EVs except Tesla, but if they can raise their prices by $10,000, well, that problem goes away. And if they can't hit volume production, which they don't seem to be able to, they can still not only break even, but actually make a profit, and quite a reasonable one too, although it still may be hard for them to make many cars. They struggle at much more than $100,000 a year on one production line, but this is why they can bring 20 or 30 different models, because they each have their own production line of 100,000 units a year. And if they add 20 production lines, then they can sell a couple of million EVs a year, perhaps, and they find lots of niche consumer markets for each model. They realize volume production is impossible, and if they want more EVs, then they need more production lines. If they're making new lines, then they may as well make new models in new markets with more demand, although it may be tough for legacy autos to make a profit still, and Rivian and Lucid may not be able to get their production levels up even that high fast enough before their burn rate catches up with them, which just leaves the Chinese. Although I think if Legacy went under, then their EV divisions could be salvaged and a lot of the fat could be trimmed in potential profitability. Anyway, I think I'm starting to realize just how valuable a product an EV is. I mean, there is no reason my Tesla won't last me decades. And it might even still be the current shape with the latest features, excluding some of the hardware. They really are such good value. It's a real asset, not a depreciating asset. It provides a service of transport at a very low cost. This has a huge intrinsic value. If the competition can get away with raising their prices soon enough, then they have a chance of survival, as the other option is not looking so likely for them, as in reducing costs to reach a profit that would have mainly been achieved through reaching volume production. I don't think all these EV startups, Chinese EVs, or legacy EV attempts will make it to profitability, but some do have a chance if things go in their direction, at least for them to make the next round. Unfortunately for them, the next round is even harder. Autonomy. Thanks for listening. Please hit the thumbs up and subscribe. You can follow me on Twitter and talk to me on Patreon.